Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Toronto. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Frank Karsten, and we're ready for round number 4 here. We've got Robert Hayes facing off against, well, now number 3 player in the world, Steve Rubin, fresh off of his victory at Pro Tour. Shadows over Innistrad, and looks like he's playing the same deck that he did there, Frank.
Hey, don't change a winning deck. He's playing the same matchup that he had in the finals. In the finals of the Pro Tour last weekend, he played in the finals against Andrea Mengucci on Band Company. Steve Rubin won there. However, I've spoken to a bunch of people, some experienced Band Company players, and they claim that the matchup was still slightly favorable for Band Company. If you have the right list, if you know what the matchup is about. But so far, Steve Rubin seems to have an excellent curve.
Absolutely. I actually had a chance to do a deck tech with Steve Rubin here at the GP. He's made a few changes to the list. We'll be bringing you that deck deck tech throughout the course of the day here. So keep your eyes out for that, especially if you're planning on playing this, at a game day or whatever. You can get some get idea what the new list is like. What he really wants to do, he said, is go Planeswalker into Planeswalker. He says he feels like that's a nearly unbeatable start in Standard. There's a few sequences that can beat it, but basically, if he can go Nissa into Gideon, he feels like that's what this deck is all about. And in fact, he's included card decisions in the deck to try to make that happen as often as humanly possible.
So what does that mean? Extra copies of Oath of Nissa?
Yeah,
for
he's maxed out on them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a great card for the deck. And I can fully agree that going Nissa into Gideon is a very powerful start.
How do you feel about Sylvan Advocate into Nissa, into Secure the Waste, into minus Nissa? How does that sit with old Dr. Frank?
Yeah, that also seems good enough to me.
It passes the test.
Hey, it's turn 4, and he already has that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 power on the board, as well as a Planeswalker that he has no trouble protecting at this point.
All right, so the question at this point starts to become, how does Robert... does he have the tools in his list to be able to combat a wide yet still big board like this?
It's going to be somewhat tough at this point. He can start attacking with Tireless Tracker, but then Steve can just block it. That doesn't really get him anywhere. All of Robert's tempo cards like Reflector Mage or Bounding Crazes are not going to help him all that much, not when the board on Steve's side is so big. Perhaps Robert has to go for kind of a long game, just put out a bunch of high toughness blockers in order to at least try to stave off the assault from Steve, and then perhaps win later on with either an Archangel Evacyn that is often played in the Band Company list, or with just bigger creatures. But Robert is definitely far behind.
Yeah, are we going to see Steve minus Nissa again here?
Well, Steve has to protect his Nissa first. So Robert is attacking with Tireless Tracker, which threatens to become a 4/3 creature if he sacrifices the clue. This means that, Steve has the option of, for instance, blocking with a Sylvan Advocate, which is 3/4 at the moment. This already forces Robert to act, because, now it's a 3/2 running into a 3/4. And, yeah.
All right, so it looks like
this is nice.
Two creatures are going to die here for Rubin, and he's going to trade off for the Tireless Tracker. That's pretty reasonable exchange on both sides, but you got to feel like Steve still pretty significantly ahead at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. He has the board presence at the moment, and Robert is behind. This attack by Tireless Tracker, I did like the block by Steve there for the reasons that I mentioned. You get rid of the attacker on Robert's side, even force him to act, which he did. And Steve now still has the initiative to push his advantage. And there's not a lot to be scared of if you're Steve. What you can anticipate is that Robert just plays a bunch of creatures over the course of the next few turns. Maybe, for instance, a Sylvan Advocate and a Bounding Crazes. Good blockers. But if Steve just keeps alternatively plussing and then minusing Nissa, eventually he'll build up a big enough board.
So Steve played an Oath of Nissa, and he found himself a Sylvan Advocate. Then he played another Oath of Nissa, found himself a land, this time a Canopy Vista. But since he knew about the Advocate already, he knew that he had the mana to play it, and sure enough, he's going to just cash in Nissa after playing that Advocate.
when you have another one in your hand, it's fair to use it for good value here.
Attack for 8 damage. Ouch.
And one of the ways that Robert can sometimes come back in a game like this is via Collected Company, which allows you to put multiple creatures on the battlefield for a low mana cost. But no company for Robert here. Just 2 decent-ish blockers. But after Steve plays another Nissa, boosts his board even further. He's just gonna attack with a bunch of 3 tokens, a 4/5 Sylvan Advocate, and I don't think Robert can line up any good blocks.
I think you were right.
Yeah, and he has seen enough.
Yeah, that was just too brutal of a start from Steve Rubin. It wasn't his perfect start, but it has to be right up there
Close
with some
enough.
of the great starts that this deck can have. Really utilizing Nissa. And, you know, this is, to me, the first standard deck that has really taken advantage of how good Nissa is and playing to her strengths in the biggest way.
Yeah.
I mean, that was ridiculous.
Absolutely. Well, one of the strengths of Nissa is that she is a 3-mana planeswalker in a format that doesn't have many 3-mana planeswalkers, so that is kind of a unique selling factor. The other aspect of Nissa is that this deck can use both the -2 ability as well as the +1 ability quite well. Steve can use the +1 ability in conjunction with other global boosts from, for instance, a Gideon emblem. And the -2 ability works well with, say, the creatures that Gideon puts out, or Hangerback Walker, or Secure the Waste, as we saw. So there is a lot of synergy with cards that are already powerful by themselves. That's always a hallmark of a strong deck. As for sideboarding, what Steve has in his sideboard, I see 2 copies of Evolutionary Leap. That might be sweet. It's a good way to get some additional value against Band Company, also to sacrifice your Hangerback Walker, triggering Archangel Avacyn perhaps. So many sweet things. And what else? Well, there are some copies of Tragic Arrogance in the sideboard. In Steve's
I think
sideboard.
he has 3 copies of it in his sideboard. I find that to be a super important card.
I think the 3 copies, or at least the third one, is mainly for human decks in order to claw back when they have a huge board. Against Band Company, yeah, you can put in 1 or 2, it's fine. But the sorcery speed sweeper type cards are not at its best against a deck that can play at instant speed. You can just let the Tragic Arrogance resolve, then cast the Collected Company. Still okay, but
Or an Avacyn, yeah.
not something you really want to rely on. And finally, as a sideboard card, there's a Linvala the Preserver in Steve's sideboard. That's a fine top-end card to bring in this matchup as well. Then as for what to cut, typically some copies of Traben Inspector. There's only 1 Traben Inspector remaining in Steve Rubin's list. That is kind of a change from the deck that he played at the Pro Tour. Looking at Robert's list, there's not a whole lot that he is interested to bring in.
Looks like Steve's going to take a mulligan here.
Yeah, Robert's sideboard has cards like Negate or Dispel, which are good against decks with, for instance, Languish or Fall of the Titans. But not so much in this matchup. Surg the Huntcaller, but that's more against ramp decks. Yeah, I don't think Robert is going to change all that much. He's also going to be on the play this game, so he can just bank on having all these powerful cards in his deck and just hope to tempo out with, say, a Collected Company. Especially when the Band Company deck is on the play, it really excels at pressuring Planeswalkers on the other side of the board because of creatures like Bounding Crazes or Reflector Mage that give you kind of a temporary advantage. And Band Company excels at leveraging that temporary advantage to attack Planeswalkers.
Get the shields down and then get the Planeswalkers off the table.
Yep.
All right, well, Steve Rubin has kept, and we are back underway here in game number 2. Duskwatch Recruiter now for Robert as he passes the turn back to Steve, who looks like he's got a Sylvan Advocate lined up. He also had a Hangerback Walker in his hand that he could choose to play, but he's gone with the Advocate.
Yeah,
it's going to block better this turn. Oh, right back to hand, though.
Guess it doesn't matter.
Steve's going to fall down to 18 after taking a hit from the Recruiter.
So I think Steve has a choice to make here. He has Nissa in hand. Could just cast that one, make a token, start jumping, but then even if Robert has another Reflector Mage or a Bounding Crazes, Robert can just attack Nissa right away, and then you don't get a lot of value out of the Planeswalker. But if Steve would just cast, say, another Sylvan Advocate, well, he can cast Sylvan Advocate, but at least a Hangerback Walker, you don't really get ahead on board in a relevant way either. Steve still has a backup Nissa in hand.
Ugh.
So, yeah, this gives Robert a temporary edge.
Now, you just mentioned this exact scenario, Frank. You know, when we were coming into this game, you said that this is what Bant Company can do to your Planeswalkers. It can get that temporary advantage by tapping down or bouncing a creature, and then leverage that by actually, you know, getting a permanent off the board here.
Yeah, that is why many people did not actually want to play these Planeswalkers or cards like Hangerback Walker, because they line up somewhat poorly against Reflector Mage. I mean, you can still play a fair game, like the game is far from over here, but this game does indicate the weakness of these green-white Planeswalker and token decks.
I'll say I'm kind of glad that the rest of the world sees things the way I do, which is how good is it against Mana War. In this case, Reflector Mage, but they've all finally caught up to me, Frank.
The main phase Collected Company, hoping to hit more Reflector Mages or Bounding Crazes to set up a reasonable attack. Because without such a creature, Robert doesn't actually have a great attack. The Duskwatch Recruiter would just run into the Sylvan Advocate, the Reflector Mage bounces off a Sylvan Advocate, and Bounding Crazes would probably be double blocked by Sylvan Advocate, and Hangerback Walker doesn't really get you ahead either. So Robert is hoping to hit some creatures so that he can keep on attacking.
He does have a decision to make here, and he has hit, looks like a Tireless Tracker and a Jace. So we'll see how this works out for him. Is that a Tireless Tracker there?
Yeah, it's a bit hidden under the Jace, but
okay.
It is almost certainly the new green creature from Shadows over Innistrad.
There it is. And he's also got a Jace. But like you said, neither of those actually set up his attack to be any better than it was before. He did still have the attack with the Bounding Crazes, and he's going to make it. It looks like Ruben is just going to exchange a little life total to preserve his board here by not blocking.
Yeah, that's fair. If Steven had double blocked with Sylvan Advocate and Hangerback Walker, he would lose one of his creatures. But since Steven has Gideon in play, which might threaten to make a powerful emblem, there is some value to just keeping your creatures on the table. It's also in no real danger of dying. 15 is still a fine life total, so not blocking could make sense from Steve's perspective there.
Here's a Nissa now from Ruben. We saw Steve on the way home from the Pro Tour, Frank, and he had his check with him.
Did he look happy?
He looked very happy. It wasn't they're not as big, you know, they're frameable, I would say, is the size. You know, you can hang it on the wall, but I was kind of parading it around the airport. Just trying to see if anybody would notice me with the novelty check for 40,000. Sadly, nobody did.
Can you even bring those as carry-on luggage? Does it even fit?
Yeah, they're small now.
Okay.
They're about as big as a playmat or a laptop, or they're in that range now.
Okay,
Those
fair.
other ones, no way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think they used to be bigger.
Yeah, that was kind of the funny thing about novelty checks for a long time, is that they're actually kind of expensive to ship.
Yeah.
So if you want to have that thing hanging on your wall at home, it's going to cost you $100 or something to get it home. I mean, most people didn't seem to mind because it is a really cool keepsake, but.
Well, Robert is making the best use out of Declaration in Stone here.
Okay.
Declaration in Stone does get better in multiples, because the more clues you give your opponent, well, they don't have time to cash in all of them. So Declaration in Stone and then a flashback by the Jace allowed him to set up a sweet attack here. And yeah, Steve now has all these clues in play, but he's not going to have the time to cash them in anytime soon. Steve has to get on board and get back.
It's actually the thing I wondered when I heard about this deck for the first time, Frank, was how weak is this tokens deck to Declaration in Stone, since Declaration in Stone just doesn't actually have a downside at all when you're playing against tokens like this. But it seems to have not really been that affected by it.
No, it's fine. Typically, you don't have that many copies of the same token on the battlefield anyway. It sometimes happens, but here the main threats on Steve's side of the board were Sylvan Advocate and Hangerback Walker. And yeah, then Declaration in Stone is not that big of a problem to face if you're the green-white player.
Played a fair bit with Declaration in Stone and Standard myself now, and kind of medium on it, honestly. I remember when it came out, and it was certainly touted as, super big time spell for Standard, and I think it is still an important spell, but I do find that my opponent finds time to cash in the clue a lot more often than I would be happy about. And the cards that they're drawing off of clues in Standard those are a real deal.
Sure, but still, Robert is playing kind of a tempo deck. He used Bounding Crazes to tap down the Lamphold Pacifist, then plus Jace on Sylvan Advocate so that it wouldn't be an effective blocker. And Robert is still pushing his board advantage here, getting in for a bunch of damage, ensuring that Steve cannot set up any profitable blocks.
Yeah, this is I like the way that Robert's playing this. Quite aggressive.
Yeah, and even if...
Ooh, there's a Westvale Abbey.
All right. Westvale Abbey is not at its best against a deck with, again, Bounding Crazes and Reflector Mage, so there are plenty of ways to deal with Ormondal, but still kind of a looming threat just sitting there on the table in case the game really does go long.
That is the interesting part about that, is that a lot of time you'll know that your Ormondal is going to get killed or bounced. But the fact is, it's such a huge life swing that sometimes it's even worth it to do it. Or sometimes it just wins you the game before they can cast something at sorcery speed.
At this point, Steve is keeping mana up for possible Hallowed Moonlight, which would be great.
Also the clue, right? Didn't you have a clue?
Yeah. Now, Hallowed Moonlight will be great if Robert plays Collected Company. But at this point, Robert doesn't really have to do that. He's just drawing cards with Tireless Tracker. He eventually can transition into a long game with his Duskwatch Recruiter, which just flipped, but still.
Still, and he also has that Jace going too, so man, there's a lot going on for Robert Hayes on his side of the board. He's looking to be in good shape, and once again, he's setting up attacks here. Boom, everybody.
Yeah, when the Band Company deck is ahead, it really excels at staying ahead. Lamphold Pacifist would have been an excellent blocker, 4/4, bigger than all the 3/3 creatures. But yeah, just one Bounding Crazes, and once again, a big turn where you can set up a huge attack.
Sylvan Advocate for Ruben, still one land away from being 4/5.
And Robert chose not to play his Jace here.
Ooh.
Possibly because he doesn't want his Werewolf to turn back. Not sure that's all that valuable, but might be a thing that he was considering.
Ruben's up a game here, but you can see his life total has dwindled down to 1.
It even means that you cannot even activate Westvale Abbey for a token.
No, he can't. Ooh, he found a tragic arrogance, though, here. Frank, is that going to get him out of this? It looks like pretty good.
Also, that might also be a reason why Robert did not play his Jace on the previous turn. Right, with Steven at 1 life, there are a few cards in the format that can get him back. One is Tragic Arrogance. Well, if that's what's going on, then you don't want to commit an additional creature to the board.
Robert's going to chump block.
Yeah, he must be expecting the tragic arrogance here, which
Yes.
means that he definitely wants to protect his planeswalker.
Yeah, I think he sniffed that one out as well. And sure enough, there goes Tragic Arrogance. So what is this going to leave us? What is the board state going to be here? It looks like Sylvan Advocate for Ruben. And just going to be a Bounding Crisis on the other side?
Probably Reflector Mage.
Oh, I didn't even
Yeah.
see him up there. Yeah. It's funny. I actually teased Steve about that while we were doing the deck tech. You guys will see that later today. A lot of lone Reflector Mages at the Pro Tour after the Tragic Arrogance. Ooh, this is a tight one.
Yeah, any Reflector Mage or Bounding Crisis would be lethal here, but
Yep.
it looks like Rubber doesn't have any anymore.
So he's just going to go wide here and play 2 more creatures and really put a lot of heat on Steve Rubin now.
Yeah, so Steve has to come up with 2 additional chum blockers, or just good blockers, to try and stay alive. He has a Gideon, that's 1.
And a hanger back.
That's 2.
Okay.
Now, it might not really turn into great blocks, because Steve will probably lose his Hangerback Walker as well as the Knight token that Gideon makes
Yes. And
when Robert attacks with all of his creatures.
the Reflector Mage is going to get eaten by the Sylvan Advocate in that scenario.
Yeah, but Steve is still clawing into this game. Well, there's probably still a Collected Company into the graveyard. That could be useful.
Could be useful indeed, Frank. That could be the game.
Oh, Reflector Mage or Bounding Crisis should do it.
See if he hit. Ooh, Robert's giving us a little sweat. Well, there's another
Ooh.
Jason. That was it.
That's it.
Whoa.
Yeah, this doesn't happen too frequently. It's only 17% to hit 1 creature with Collected Company, at least in the main deck of a typical Band Company deck. So a bit of an unfortunate turn of events for Robert here. Getting the Jace is also not really helping him, because I think he already had a Jace in hand.
Wow. So that was just terrible there for Robert. But he's going to force the issue here. This is going to convince Steve to chump block with 2 of his creatures. And like we said, he's probably going to just gobble up the Reflector Mage with his own Sylvan Advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, Ruben is still very much in this. He's going to get a 1/1 flyer. He still has a Gideon. Ooh, but that was a Lumbering Falls that that Robert kind of deftly threw down on end step there.
Very sneakily put in there.
He did.
So Robert has 3 attackers on the next turn. Steve has to make sure that he has enough blockers. Well, he has Sylvan Advocate. He can make a token with Gideon and then the Topter, so that should work. Steve definitely cannot attack with his own Sylvan Advocate. That will just get double blocked by the 2 advocates on Robert's side of the board. So we may gradually get into a bit of a board stall here.
Okay. Ruben still has that Hollowed Moonlight in his hand. Is it time to just fire that off?
Yeah, I think Steve was looking, okay, how many Collected Companies have you drawn already? I kind of need something here. I
Yeah,
can
he's just going to
keep
go
it in
ahead and
hand,
do it.
but you know, I just need the extra card now. If I draw, say, a Hangerback Walker or a Nissa, that's just gonna give me more value.
How about a Lambhole Pacifist?
That's a fine blocker.
I mean, that is what he wanted. He didn't need it to survive technically, but
And with fine blocker, I actually mean a fine jump blocker, because
oh yeah, good point.
it's not really gonna do all that much against the 4/5 Sylvan Advocate, another 4/5 Sylvan Advocate, and
7/7?
7/7 Lumbering Falls.
Wow, that is some serious lumbering.
Yeah, so let's see what Robert can hit off of Jace.
Ooh, Collected Company off the top for Robert.
Aw. Steve will really
that
feel down
justice?
if that's indeed the case and he just cycled his Hallowed Moonlight.
After holding on to it for like 4
Yeah.
turns.
But you know, it's a risk you have to take. Steve is a little behind on the board because he doesn't have great blockers for the Lumbering Falls. So he had to try and do something there. All right.
Ruben's like,
Company.
yep.
But
Let's see
now
if he
a
hits.
Reflector Mage or Bounding Crisis is not completely lethal yet.
How
because
about both?
it's good, but now Robert doesn't have the mana to activate Lumbering Falls.
Oh yeah.
So this is not going to be lethal.
Has he played a land for the turn? Huh!
No, but still not
Still doesn't
enough.
have enough. He's just going to play
immediately
another.
flashback. Yeah, with Jace.
This is what I like. How about another Reflector Mage? My goodness. Wow, so Robert Hayes actually got rid of, or at least temporarily detained, 3 separate creatures there on that one turn
Yep.
to punch through that one last damage. So
That
Robert's
i-
going
that
to
is
even
what the
things
deck
up
does.
here.
Yeah, that was the saddest Hallowed Moonlight cycle ever.
That was... that's insane, right?
Yep.
Make sure you join us for the Magic Online Championship. It's in a couple of weeks from Seattle, Washington. That's where I'm from, Frank,
I know.
from Seattle.
You're going to be there as well?
Yeah, I'll be there doing coverage. I love that event. The thing is, I play a lot of Magic Online. That's, where I play the majority of my Magic. I get out to the local shops occasionally, but since I'm
Mhm.
traveling a lot for these tournaments to do coverage, my main way to play, and I have to play, right? Like, kind of on 2 different levels. One of them being I have to play because I like to, but but also, so that I can get my hands on the draft format, the different lists and that kind of thing, so that when I'm in the booth, I at least have, gotten in there and touched the cards. I can't test all decks in all scenarios, but I feel ill prepared if I haven't at least, fired up a few cues with some of these decks and gotten a feel for how the format plays out. And so, when we do the coverage of the mocks, as we call it, the Magic Online Championship Series, it's just kind of my comfort zone. I get to watch the, games in Magic Online, and that's kind of my language. I do play some live, but the vast majority of my Magic experience comes on Magic Online.
It's such a great tool for getting a lot of games of Magic in and for practicing for events. I still remember when I started playing a little before the year 2000, there wasn't even Magic Online. So all the practice and all the games was in person, which meant
What?
that, it's back in the days, that's how it was done. All paper. Game was still a lot of fun, but I can easily see the difference between how experienced with the game people are now, because you just play it so much on Magic Online, and how kind of new people were and inexperienced with the game back then.
God, before Magic Online, did you have electricity or?
No, that came with Magic Online as well. Yeah,
that's a really nice 2-for-1, by the way.
But the Mox is indeed an awesome tournament for the people who managed to qualify, who probably put in a lot of time for practicing on Magic Online, going through all these tournaments, really playing their hearts out. I know that this is going to be a big event for them. Last year, Magnus Lento won.
Yeah.
And you get instant qualification for all the pro tiers for the next year. It can really be a breakthrough moment for many of those players.
It was Lars Dam before that.
Yep.
Where's Lars from? Is he Denmark? Netherlands?
Originally Denmark.
Denmark, yeah. But he was living in Thailand, I believe, at the time.
Yes. So there seems to be a bit of an issue with a sleeve
there, yeah.
getting replaced here. Always a bit awkward if you have to replace a sleeve and then it's a double-faced card.
Interesting.
But, oh well.
So one little thing that we'll have to keep a close eye on, I think it slipped by us and maybe the players as well, was that Gideon, Tom Martell's in the chat, and he says that the Gideon actually made a knight after the Hallowed Moonlight.
And Hallowed Moonlight counts for both players.
Believe so, yeah.
Huh?
Kind of interesting. So it didn't end up affecting the outcome of the game that time, but we'll keep an eye on that. That's a Hallowed Moonlight, basically strictly a sideboard card. You don't see it super often under the lights here, but
yeah, it may have been indeed a game rule violation there.
a GRV as they call them.
Yeah, sure, but I'm sure it was unintentional.
Yeah.
Like none of us caught it. It's just a strange interaction that rarely happens, that you cycle Hallowed Moonlight on your own turn and want to make some tokens. But yeah, that might be something to keep in mind. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So we've got Hangerback Walker here after the Oath of Nissa. He's going to play another Oath of Nissa. That is legendary, so you'll see one of them hit the battlefield. And interesting stuff here. You know, when I talked to Ruben earlier today about what he wants to do with this deck and why he likes it, he said it was because he wants to be able to play turn 3 Planeswalker, turn 4 Planeswalker. He's not going to be able to do that this game, but he mentioned that he's playing the full 4 Oath of Nissa for this express reason. He wants to find the mana or the Planeswalkers to get this as consistent as possible. And it does look like he's going to get to go turn 4, turn 5 Planeswalkers here. So, not bad.
Good enough. Yeah, Steve had to take a little time off with all of these Oath of Nissa, but he has found Gideon and then Nissa, which is exactly what his deck tries to do.
Yeah, you mentioned this a minute ago, Frank, that, you know, Hangerback Walker definitely has taken a hit in popularity in Standard, and that's the main reason right there, right? Reflector Mage just...
Yep. Yeah, you invest all the mana, all the time, and then one Reflector Mage, one enters the battlefield ability. It just undoes all the work. Not to mention Declaration in Stone and other effects that easily exile Hangerback Walker.
Yeah, we saw Hangerback fall out of favor for a while in last Standard when Silk Wrap got popular.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Steve Rubin is going to make a Gideon here.
Always good. Now, this is
Make a knight.
a difference from the previous game.
Okay.
In the sense that in this game, Steve was on the play. If Robert would have been on the play this game, Robert could have easily already had an additional creature on the board, such that he could start attacking these Planeswalkers right away.
And really leverage the Reflector Mages and create Bounding Krasis.
Yep, but Robert was on the draw, also missed a 2-drop, another crucial element here. If Robert had a Sylvan Advocate here on the battlefield, he could just tap or bounce the Knight token, attack Gideon, and really have an excellent board presence.
Wow, what a huge difference.
Yep, it's just one early play, but it can change
I mean,
everything.
this is fine, but like this is such a huge difference when Ruben now gets to keep his Planeswalker, gets to make a Knight, and now gets to add to his board to put up blockers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Stasis Snare off the top for Ruben. I am curious about Robert's deck list. Do you have that there? Just because when I see a Stasis Snare, you know, from one, it makes me think of Dromica's Command, and I know that Dromica's Command is a card that this Bant Company list plays. He's got 4 in the main deck. I'm curious to see if they've stayed in or not. I don't know how important they are in the matchup offhand, but one really cool interaction that Steve actually talks to us about in the deck tech is look at that Oath of Nissa, just laughing.
It's good
Dromica's
protection.
Command. Yeah. Yep. And that means that he gets to use a Stasis Snare as a really great removal spell, you know, instant speed, exile.
Yep.
And he's got a backup protection plan here too. Really cool little interactions with this deck that can add up.
Aggressive with the Gideon. Fair enough.
He's going to slam with Gideon, make a plant, make a Hangerback,
and there's
ship it back. Is he just trying to pick a fight here? I mean, is he making it difficult for Robert to keep applying pressure to the Planeswalkers if it means he's going to be taking big chunks of damage on the crackback here?
I think typically attacking with Gideon is a better use than just making another Knight. Now, if Robert had more creatures on the battlefield, then Steve might have just made a Knight in order to protect his Planeswalkers better. But here, Steve is... he doesn't have to worry about losing any of his Planeswalkers. Even if Robert has another Bounding Krasis or a Reflector Mage, the best Robert can do is take out one of the 2 blockers. Then Robert may attack one Planeswalker with both of his Reflector Mages. But then Steve still has a blocker available to make sure that that Planeswalker sticks around on the board. For that reason, attacking with Gideon is perfectly fine here. You also cannot give the Bant Company deck too much time to set up. Maybe something like a Tragic Arrogance or something like that.
We've certainly seen this Bant Company deck grind out a lot of cards in the late game when it's left unchecked with cards like that. Tireless Tracker, Duskwatch Recruiter. So he's going to play the Tracker, but his his land was a second Lumbering Fall, so he doesn't actually get to crack this clue right away. Small tempo loss there, but probably nothing too terrible.
In a typical game of Magic, if you have a pair of planeswalkers on a battlefield for multiple turns, and the opponent is not really pulling ahead and being able to pressure those planeswalkers,
Is that a tragic arrogance, Frank?
you can get ahead and win. It certainly is.
You know, one of the tricks that is pretty cool with that too is you can actually activate your Gideon.
And keep that as a creature.
Yeah.
So you can
Isn't
keep
that sweet?
you can keep Gideon as the creature, the Topter token as the artifact, Nissa as the planeswalker.
Oath of Nissa as your enchantment.
Yeah, why not? Sounds good.
Wow. Yeah, there we go. Upstairs with Gideon. And now he's going to play Tragic Arrogance, Creature, Planeswalker, Artifact, Enchantment. You may have a tapped Reflector Mage and a clue, Robert Hayes.
Love it.
Wow. That is just savage. So Gideon gets to attack here. It looks like Steve's still considering his options as far as what he wants to do with Nissa. And it looks like he's going to attack with Gideon and the Thopter and just make a plant after combat here.
Yeah, I definitely think it makes sense to make a plant here because you want to be able to block the Lumbering Falls, at least, in case Robert activates Lumbering Falls, attacks with the Falls and the Reflector Mage. You don't want to lose your Gideon for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, Robert still needs to find a green or a blue source to be able to do that. He's got kind of an awkward draw with the 3 planes there. I will say the mana in this Bant Company deck is not stellar. It can get a little clunky.
That is true. It is one of the main weaknesses of the deck. It is possible to get more than enough colored sources for every color into the deck, but that does come at the cost of a lot of enters the battlefield tapped lands. For a deck that does want to play 2, 3, 4 on curve, it is tough to get the right mix, and sometimes you don't always have perfect mana. I mean, Robert has close to perfect mana, just not exactly.
Okay, so it was another Reflector Mage to get rid of the plant and apply some pressure to Gideon. But I feel like this sequence just favors Ruben. And it's insane going back to the discussion that you brought to the table earlier, Frank, about being on the player of the draw here. Like, Robert Hayes has played from behind every single turn that we've seen of this game. And if he had been on the play, he would have been able to kill Gideon and probably would just be ahead, just attacking life total or applying massive pressure to Planeswalkers. Instead, he has to settle for bounce a plant, hit your Gideon for 2, go. While Ruben is, more typically plussing Gideon, attacking for 5, 6 damage if you include the Thopter, and really just pulling ahead on life total here and making this kind of a tempo game. All right, it looks like Gideon plus, so Gideon's a creature, then Nissa minus to put +1/+1 counters on both, making this
the unusual Gideon with 3 loyalty counters and 1/+1/+1 counter. You have to keep track of a lot of things here. Robert chose not to block. That meant that he would have been dead to a Dramoka's command, but Robert is so far behind that he cannot really play around these things. And I guess Robert still had Dramoka's command of his own, which he chooses not to use. Yeah, I mean, maybe Robert is playing around the Stasis Snare in Steve's hand by not casting Dramoka's command to fight at the end of Steve's turn. But Robert is pretty far behind and may just have to take some risks in order to be able to attack these Planeswalkers. Although, given that he has Negate in hand, this might work out fine.
Okay, here's Stasis Snare for Ruben.
So I presume both creatures are aimed at Gideon.
And yeah, you mentioned it. There's the negate now from Robert. Looks like Ruben's hand is Hollowed Moonlight, Archangel Avacyn. Finally, that Gideon dies. Man, did so much work, though. Robert's down to 1 life. And it looks like, yeah, his mana is actually pretty awkward. He's got a Bounding Crisis in his hand that he can't cast. So he's going to go for Dromoka's command to take out the last threat on the board here. There are no creature lands for Steve Rubin, well, unless you count Westvale Abbey. And Robert Hayes has tentatively stabilized here.
Tentatively, there's still a Archangel Evacin coming up soon enough. But
Indeed.
that was a huge turn for Robert there. Taking out the Gideon, having the right combination of negate and Remoka's command to still stay in there. If he missed one of those cards, he would have been dead on his turn.
Yep. Another Gideon here for Rubin. He's trying to decide if he wants to play Gideon, which he did, or leave up Archangel Avacyn mana here. And he's just going to play Gideon. This does give him 2 lethal threats if he wants to use his Nissa next turn. And it also allows him to leave Hollowed Moonlight up in case Robert Hayes decides to either draw and or cast a Collected Company.
Yeah, and this leaves Robert in a bit of a pickle. On the one hand, he wants to attack Gideon right now in order to get that Planeswalker off of the table. But if he does, then he leaves himself defenseless without blockers for what could be even a lethal plant token.
Yeah, Death by Plant, that is a tough way to go, I'll tell you that. Yeah, Rubin, very calculated here. Has that Hollowed Moonlight.
Yeah, having the Hallowed Moonlight is also pretty important because one of the ways that Band Company can get back from behind is Collected Company. So Hallowed Moonlight's still the perfect answer to that. Alright, going for the aggressive attack. I wonder what Robert has in mind for defending on Steve's turn. You know, there's always a Bounding Crisis that can take down one attacker by tapping it and then jump block another. That could work.
He attacked Nissa there. Steve decided to chump with the plant token. Crack a clue. This is good news for Steve Rubin. When your opponent's going to spend a good chunk of their mana just cracking for a random card, you got to feel like you're in a pretty good position.
Yeah, so Steve has to expect either Bounding Crisis or Collected Company here.
And it is, in fact, a Bounding Crisis. That's going to lock down Gideon and mean that that Knight doesn't have enough power to get through the Crisis. This has been a really cool game. I felt like Steve Rubin's been ahead for effectively the entire game, but he does need to find a way to get this one last point of damage in. I feel like the Hollowed Moonlight kind of has it locked up, though, right? Because isn't the way that Robert actually comes back from this is by drawing Collected Company, casting it? He just drew Collected Company? No, I think it was actually a land. But
yeah, it was Evolving Wilds.
Evolving Wilds and getting back in, right? I mean, and Steve is just effectively keeping that door shut. He's also got Archangel Avacyn in his hand.
Yep. Yeah, Robert is still in pretty much the same tough spot as on the last turn.
Right.
Except he now has a Bounding Crisis, but the death by plant is still looming over. And especially the Archangel Evacyn with flying, Robert may have a hard time dealing with that as well. Ojitai's command would be a perfect answer, but I don't think he has one in hand. He actually has none in his deck list, so that's not an option.
Yeah, sometimes the Bant Company list will run one. It looks like Rubin is going to go ahead and play Archangel Avacyn here, and this will likely be the nails in the coffin. Outside of a card like Tragic Arrogance or something like that for Robert. Oh, he's got a Tragic Arrogance in his hand. Oh.
That would work. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, Tragic Arrogance.
Steve might have been actually a bit over-eager to play his Archangel Evacyn already right now.
That's interesting.
Sure, by playing Archangel Evacyn now, you protect your Planeswalkers. That's valuable.
Wow, he's going to leave him with a plant? He's going to leave him with a plant, an Oath of Nissa, and a Nissa.
Yep. Well,
wow.
Certainly not the Evacyn.
And Avacyn's gone. Yeah, remember that has you sacrifice those permanents. So the fact that they're indestructible to creatures is not relevant here.
Yep.
Still a Westphal Abbey down there, by the way, for Ruben.
Oh, the game is still far from over. This was a big swing for Robert Hayes, especially because he was able to get that Archangel Everson in the Tragic Arrogance as well. But, Steve Ruben still has now Gideon and Nissa going on. There's 2 potentially lethal plant tokens already waiting to administer a stylish death.
Can Robert survive again? This has just been insane how he's still alive. You were mentioning earlier, Frank, about how when a player in a game of Standard has 2 Planeswalkers up for multiple turns, how their advantage snowballs. And we finally see the handshake there for Robert, but kudos to him for really battling it out and sticking to his to the game plan there as much as possible. Steve Rubin applying intense pressure for the duration of that game, and finally Robert succumbs to, well, like you said, the plant token death there.
Yep.
Great stuff, though.
Robert really did his best. He stayed in the game for longer than I had expected after seeing Nissa and Gideon take up for so long. But, the Band Company deck doesn't really run out of steam quickly.
All right, well, it looks like we're going to go with some turbo magic here. Adam Yurchik versus Shaheen Surani. And for fans of Shaheen, you'll see he's playing the 3 colors that we have grown accustomed to Shaheen playing, which is the Esper colors.
Of course. He likes his control decks.
He specifically likes Esper, too. I mean, it's his real, he's a big fan.
Yeah, it looks like Shaheen is on the Planeswalker variant of Esper. Although with Jace in the main deck right now, Adam Yurchik appears to be playing the green-black sacrifice deck that Luis Scott Vargas piloted to a top 8 at the Proto last weekend. No Nantuko Husk or Zulaport Cutthroat to be seen, and also no Duskwatch Recruiter or Westphal Abbey to spend the mana from Cryptolith Rights on. But, random 1/1s and 2/3s can still keep on attacking.
And by the way, that was nice. Negate countered a Collected Company in there. That was huge.
Yeah, Negate may be a new addition to the deck. I believe there was Spell Shrivel at the Pro Tour, but looking at how many non-creature spells there are around in the current Standard, Negate seems like a fine addition, even to have in the main deck.
Yeah, the version that you're talking about was Seth Manfield. He ran 2 Spell Shrivel in that deck. I don't know how similar it is to Shaheen's deck. I'm going to take a look right now, though, and try to get a feel for this.
Sure. In the meantime, there was a Dark Petition getting Languish. That was huge, taking out all the attackers on Adam's side of the board, while allowing Shaheen to just keep taking up his Planeswalkers. And, as we saw in the previous game, if you have multiple Planeswalkers on the battlefield for multiple turns in a regular game of Standard, you are truly poised to win.
I'm taking a look at Shaheen's deck, and it is significantly different, though.
Interesting.
The Planeswalkers look pretty good here. He's got 2 Sorens, a Sphinx of the Final Word, a Descend Upon the Sinful in the main deck here as well. He's got 1 Dark Petition, 2 Ojutai's Command. And then his card draw engines beside the Planeswalkers are 4 Painful Truths. He's also playing a pair of Clash of Wills, and then the 2 Negate in the main deck that we talked about, along with 4 Jace main and 4 Grasp of Darkness. So a little bit of a different take. It's along the same lines, though.
Yeah, but it just goes to show how much flexibility control players have in this format. You can just pick up the tools that you think are the best and run with those.
Totally. And here's a Languish. And man, I like the start from Adam Yurchik, but he's seen enough here as Shaheen Surani with 3 active Planeswalkers on an empty board. That's you're not going to beat that very often.
Yeah, I mean, this is what control players dream of. Completely empty board on the other side. You're like, okay, well, plus my Sorin, I'll activate my Planeswalker here, get some additional cards. Yeah, you're up. It's when a control deck like this gets to the late game in such a board state, it is pretty much impossible to lose from that point. That is just how the deck is built to function. But let's see if Adam can put up a better fight this game, perhaps with a faster start, maybe a Zulaport Cutthroat before a big Languish resolves.
This is looking pretty good so far for your chick.
Mhm. So transgress the mind. Cannot take ultimate prize, but certainly can take Sorin. There was also no languish in there, just some spot removal spells. Adam was certainly happy to see that. Because it means that he can just keep adding to his board.
Well, Shaheen's definitely falling behind here pretty quickly. He just used the Painful Truths for 3. And he's been taking hits from the ground force here.
It's mesmerizing to look at Shaheen flicking through the cards in his hand, even at turbo speed. This is incredible. Whoosh.
He is
And a
very,
whoosh.
he is very fast. Ultimate price, the Husk. Now he's facing down a pretty annoying Planeswalker for his deck. You see that Liliana has already minus to bring back a creature, but the plussing actually gets pretty annoying from a control player's perspective. It's taking cards out of their hand every single turn.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we don't have life totals because it's just a turbo match. But I have to imagine that at this point Shaheen is down to single-digit life totals. All these
Yeah.
small chips from the 1 power and 2 power creatures do add up. Painful Truths as well. It looks like it's going to be Languish or maybe Planar Outburst or Bust for Shaheen at this point.
He's just going to plus Jason pass. He's got the Shambling Vent, so he's actually in a stable position here as far as damage goes.
For the time being, sure. Still facing down a Planeswalker and a Westville Abbey that can allow Adam to generate little bits of advantage turn after turn. Now a Duskwatch Recruiter as well. Sure, Adam may not have great attacks in the face of that Shambling Vent, but as long as Adam keeps this board position up, he might actually be drawing more cards than Shaheen.
And that was it. Yeah, Shaheen's life total must have been quite low at that point.
Mm.
So that means we get a game 3 here in our turbo match. We're early in the day. This is just round 4 of the tournament. Standard action here from Toronto all weekend long. We've got Randy Bueller waiting in the wings to come in next round as well. For now, you get me and Frank.
And the Catacomb Sifter, which is still attacking for a bunch.
So are you, with you and I, are you the Catacomb Sifter or the Scion?
Well, looking at how tall you are, I think you are the lumbering Catacomb Sifter, and I'm just the Eldrazi Scion sitting on the chair here. I mean, for the community Super League that started, I think they put your face on a picture of some kind of lumberjack.
Yeah, the Stoic Builder.
Oh yeah, that one. Hey, it looked great.
Yeah, I've been working out.
Yeah.
You know, lifting logs, cutting down trees.
All right, so in the meantime, we have a bunch of value from Tireless Tracker, a bunch of attacks from the creatures, all of which draw cards or get cards. Shaheen doesn't have any board presence. No Planeswalker yet.
Oh, Descent Upon the Sinful is going to take
that-
care of
that
this.
may change things.
Still, Adam has those 2 clues stocked up as potential card draw down the line, which he's going to cash in immediately.
Yeah, but Shaheen definitely needed a sweeper there. And now, well, the control player may be getting ahead. Draw some cards, have a bunch of removal spells and other answers to whatever Adam may be doing. I already see a Narset lurking in Shaheen's hand. So unless Adam can set up some quick kill before Shaheen has time to cast all of his cards, looks like Shaheen may be getting away with this game.
Why didn't Liliana transform there? Did I miss something? I thought I saw 1 or maybe even 2 Nantuko husks die there, but maybe I saw it wrong. At any rate,
I'm not sure. It's possible that Adam missed the trigger.
Okay, yeah, it's possible too. In the meantime, Shaheen's kind of right where he wants to be. He's got a Planeswalker actually ready to ultimate though. I will say I don't think Narset's emblem is that great here, right? Basically just blanks
No.
collected company.
Yeah, or Cryptolith Right, which at this point wouldn't really do anything.
Yeah,
you-
Narset's emblem, for those who remember, it says your opponents cannot cast non-creature spells.
Mm.
But this is very much a creature deck that Adam's playing.
Yeah, Adam had the right answer for Kalitas, which is otherwise a huge problem for the deck that he is playing, because when Kalitas is on the battlefield, creatures don't die anymore, so there are no Zulaport Cutthroat triggers. But
By the way, he
Right.
did just ultimate Narset there, Frank.
all right, the just in case, oh well, might as well. It doesn't do all that much, but well, it takes out some possibilities.
Fleshbag Marauder for Yurchik, even though nothing on the other side of the battlefield for Serrani. He probably brought that in for a presumed Dragonlord Ojutai, but that does it.
No, the
Shaheen Serrani wins our turbo match 2-1 over Adam Yurchik, and that's going to do it for round 4.
the
here from
removal
Toronto.
spells were.
Pro Tour Gauntlet events are going on now on Magic Online. Test drive one of the top decks from this Pro Tour. For more information, go to mtgo.com. There's never been a better time to get into Standard. Set rotation and Shadows over Innistrad have altered the format's landscape dramatically. Blaze a new trail at Friday Night Magic. For more information, visit magic.wizards.com/FNM.
Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Grand Prix Toronto. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, and I've got